Before we get started, and while I go grab a chair as well to sit down, let's just go around quickly and have each one of you do a quick introduction of yourselves. And also, I want to ask one question, which is, why do you think that fintech is so important? Why are you working in fintech? You want to start, Emil?
Yeah, sure. My name is Emil Sawaya. I'm the co-founder of Reable. We build apps and tools to help people with disabilities achieve financial independence through working with banking institutions as well as creating applications for the users themselves. And 15% of the world's population has a disability. We're focusing on the 3% that have intellectual disabilities. And the reason why I love fintech is because I started this because I have a younger brother who has autism, and I have seen firsthand the consequences of not being able to use money correctly and not being able to have access to financial services. So we're trying to be part of the movement that makes that happen.
So Paul Jazzar, I'm the co-founder of Fluya. So we are a customer value management company and also an e-payment company. As a case in point, we are the company that led and supported the Saudi Central Bank in designing and rolling out. Closer, like this. Can I start singing? No. Okay. All right. So we led the effort with the Saudi Central Bank to develop and deploy the Saudi peer-to-peer mobile payment. It was one of the strategic milestones on their 2030 vision, reducing cash cost management on the economy. I'm sure we'll have the chance to talk about the impact of cash management on the economy more later. That's it.
Lama Dahir, I work at the Central Bank of Lebanon. And actually, I'm leading a financial inclusion project that aims to enhance access to finance to all segments of the Lebanese population, and especially also the MSMEs. We do also at the central bank believe that fintech is actually can play a potential role in increasing access to finance to the unbanked and to the underserved population. We are here to tell you also about the facilities that the central bank is offering to fund innovation or innovative startups in general. Thank you.
I'm Faris Kubaisi. I'm the founder of Bluring, a fintech specialized in credit risk management. We're leaders in the Middle East in this area. We've been there for 8 years now. And that's it.
Hi, I'm Samir. Samir Zain, founder of Neotic. Neotic offers artificial intelligence solution for the analysis of the financial markets. Our main customer is a US trader, and the other segment is every investment institution, from hedge fund to investment banks. So the service we provide is every day we collect all the data about all the companies in the US, the listed ones, and then we process all of this to extract maximum information that would be useful for any investor or trader to use. Why to work in this sector? I do believe that we have a big opportunity right now with all the evolution of the technology and artificial intelligence tools, like Google now is offering for free TensorFlow to make big data analysis. So from here, we can analyze and do smart things as our Phoenician ancestors did in exporting intelligence and exporting information to so far it's the U.S. markets. Voilà.
Okay, I have a quick question to start. Should Lebanon, should the banks, should the BDL or the country be afraid of fintech, or should they be afraid of not going into fintech?
I believe that we should not be afraid of fintech. We should start by trying to understand the fintech services or the opportunity that fintech can provide. We have to also understand the risks that are related to financial, technology or financial technologies. This is important, and we believe that, and it's actually the case in Lebanon. We believe that there is possibility for partnerships and collaboration between existing traditional banks and financial institutions with financial technology companies.
I think, in fact, whether the regulator or the banks or us as an economy, generally speaking, we should be very afraid of not adopting fintechs, of not encouraging fintechs, of not enabling entrepreneurs to go into fintechs. Simply because banks in the Lombard system, so the banking system in Lebanon is a système Lombard. It's give me $1, I lend you $1. That's roughly what it is. Being risk averse might be good in a time of crisis, but it's extremely bad in a time of growth. So we're not saying let the banks open up and distribute the money and take all the risks they can. And I agree with Lama, maybe a good compromise would be a partnership between those fintechs and the banks. But if we miss that wave, we'll miss a huge avenue for revenues to bring in capital into Lebanon, to keep and retain our talents into Lebanon. Because these guys, if they have 250 regulations to abide by in order to start a fintech company in Lebanon, they will leave, go to Dubai, they will go to Europe, they will go to the US, they're not gonna stay here. So to answer your question, I think definitely should be embraced today before tomorrow. That's our view on that.
To make the discussion a bit exciting, I'm gonna go against what Paul just said. The concept, I think that the concept that the fintech industry is gonna disrupt the banking sector, I don't think this will happen. Unlike what happened in the book industry or in the taxi industry, the banking industry is much more difficult to disrupt. All reports today show that fintech industry definitely will be collaborating and working together with the banking sector. I don't see the banking sector disappearing. There's more regulations, but those regulations are to protect the citizens who have deposits inside the banks, and the fintech that will try to be disruptive, like peer-to-peer lending and other type of fintechs, the regulations will be applied to them very soon. So the point behind regulations on the banking sector were to protect those who are crediting the bank, i.e. people. Latest report and in the last economics, you can see there's an excellent 10 pages about fintech and the banking sector. And it basically says that banks will rely on fintechs to improve the way they offer their services. So I think as fintech companies, more than trying to disrupt the sector, we will have a big opportunity to sell to the banking sector that requires to change the way it behaves and the way it accesses customers and the way it offers its services. This is my perception.
May I add something? I agree and disagree with you in a way. Now we had the honor as we're able to be partnered up with Barclays in the Techstars Accelerator in South Africa, and it is obvious from the bank's point of view that they do need to partner up with fintechs in order to move forward, in order to provide a better service to their customers. However, something that needs to be understood is that if we're looking just at the Lebanese market, then fair enough, all these regulations, all these banks, fintechs aren't going to do everything. But if we want companies that are coming out of this country and are serving the international market, which includes Africa, such as Kenya, where mobile money has 70% adoption rate, not controlled by a central bank, but controlled by telecoms. So while I do believe that fintechs and banks should work hand in hand, but I do believe that if the banks do not adopt their practices for these partnerships to happen, then they will die out. Maybe not in 10 years, maybe not in 20 years, but eventually.
Look, I just want to do a quick poll of the audience. How many of you think that you are very familiar with fintech? You study it, you work in it, you know. Okay, so how many people are you kind of beginners? You heard about it, but you're not really sure, you're curious. Okay, how come not many of you are, who did not raise their hand right there? Why did you guys not raise your hand? You never heard of it before. Okay, so great, this is what I was curious. Let's take a step back, folks, and let's work on the definition and explanation of what is fintech. So actually, before we go to these folks here, I want to ask you folks, what is included within the domain of fintech? Just shout it out, and if I can hear you, then I'll say it on the mic so everyone can hear. What is fintech? Computers, e-services, and technology. That's so incredibly vague. Peer-to-peer lending, sure. What else? What is finance? Okay, payments. What else? What is fintech? Come on, people. Work with me here. What is fintech? Online mortgages. Online mortgages. Excellent. What else? Yes. Sorry? I'm just going to hop down here. All right. So, what is it? User technology? Using technology to provide banking services. What do you think is fintech? Putting you on the spot. Come on, people. What?
We have the bitcoins and the blockchains.
Bitcoins and blockchains. Yes. What else? What is fintech? Come on. E-financial services. Yes. Yes. Let's be more specific. What else? What does that mean? Yes. Cybersecurity. Sure. Cybersecurity. What else? What? Most important. What else? I'm not even saying that. Okay, what about, hey, come on. You want to share something? You don't? You write about fintech. Identity. What about identity services to see how you can actually track people's identity online? What about insurance? Insurance is a core part of fintech as well. And insurance, of course, as well covers lots of things. That includes health insurance and life insurance, social security, etc. So it covers, so how about you folks? What else? What are we missing so far?
Payment gateways. Payment gateways.
Yeah, right. These are, I was expecting this actually to come as answers about what is fintech. Always, systematically, people forget about the retail investment and institutional investment. These are two very important, heavy, full with money and opportunity, but I don't know. Always we talk about cryptocurrencies, online payment, e-commerce, but there is the selection of the investment and the intelligence and robo-advice. And let me tell you about this. recently in KPMG report about fintech, they were saying that there is missing a lot of robo-advice. So their recommendation is to invest in more robo-advice. The fintech is behind, I mean, the intelligence that is used by Facebook and Google today is way ahead the fintech sector for certain reason. I don't know. Maybe they're afraid of going into the robots of things. They trust only a human expert, but actually the retail investment and institutional investment are also two main sectors in the fintech. I'll leave for you the stage.
No, that's great. What else are we missing? Yeah.
CRM, payroll.
CRM payroll. Excellent. What else? Business intelligence. Huh? We also, no one mentioned, what is one of our biggest sources of revenue in this entire country? What does our country live on? Remittances. Yes. What about, yes?
RegTech, regulation, using
Regulations.
technology to, for compliance and regulation.
Excellent. What about customer service at a bank? It's one of the things that banks, if we're talking about banks as buyers and they want to make the experience of their customers better and better, every time you go into a bank here, frequently they're coming up with a new system to take a number and wait and all of this stuff. They want to make that retail experience better. Okay. You had to wait an hour to make a payment on the internet. No, I'm kidding. At the bank, you had to wait an hour. How'd that make you feel? Very bad. You were pissed. Okay, I have a question, folks. In 10 years, are brick and mortar banks going to exist? Are we going to have to go there at all?
I don't have the gift of foresight, unfortunately. But I think it depends on the market. I think in 10 years, yes. In 50, in 100, probably not. But in 10 years, definitely.
You're being vague. How many people think that in 10 years you will actually have to go to a physical bank to do pretty much anything? How many people, yes. In 10 years, I will still be going to a bank. Raise your hand. 10 years, I will still be going to a bank. She says, of course. 1, 2, yes. Yes. What do you guys think up here? 10 years, yes. You're going to be going to a bank? Emil thinks yes, yes. Okay. How many people think definitely no? I am not going to a bank. Banks will not be physical places I have to go to. Okay. Seems like the no's are winning that. Yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it really, David, the conversation's here. Really, it depends on the region. If you're talking about the Nordic countries, definitely, it's already happening. People don't visit their banks. If you're talking about Lebanon, to take the other extreme, I think in 10 years, people will still be queuing at their banks. This is a question of culture, regulations, red tape, resistance to change, all of that stuff. So do we wish that banks, physical banks, would just be obsolete? Of course. But I don't think it's going to happen in Lebanon. Let's focus on Lebanon now. In the next 10 years, I don't think that's possible.
I think already today I don't go to the bank anymore. So this is, I've not been to the bank for quite some time. Everything we do it online. Now we do it online in a twisted way compared to what digital banking is going to be in 10 years. So it's going to be a much nicer customer experience. I'll be able to do more things than just send an email, but definitely the way we operate with the banks has changed. What will stay is the bank itself. So the way I'm going to behave with the bank is going to change, or the way the customer is going to, or the bank is going to offer me services is going to change, but the bank will still exist for one reason. A bank is a middleman between people who have money and people who need money. So basically, a bank operates, takes money from you guys, they give you percentage interest on your deposits, and they lend it to people who need money, and they make the profit on the difference of interest they make pay to people who need the money with people who want the money. This will never disappear. Whether then there's an Apple is going to become also a bank, meaning Apple is going to also have depositors and have creditors, then that Apple is going to behave as a bank. Regulation is going the opposite way of what we're talking about. So though fintech as a technology is moving quickly, and also regulation is becoming tougher. So today, there are a lot of regulations, not in Lebanon, in the US and all over the world. Basel agreements, IFRS 9, and many other regulations are coming into effect. And they are primarily to make sure that the financial crisis that happened in 2007 and 8 will not happen again. And this can only happen through regulations, and the federal banks all over the world are increasing those compliances. So in 2 words, banks are going to still be there. Whether they're going to be banks called banks or not is another story. The way those banks will operate internally and the way they will operate vis-a-vis their customer is going to completely change. There is one point I'd like to add, is the only thing that is disruptive is the payment. I totally agree. Payment is open to any company to work on it. However, peer-to-peer lending, crowdfunding, and other types of fintechs, I don't think they will go very far on the long run.
I would like to add that I would like to ask you a question, actually. Why do you think fintech can prosper? Can prosper or can grow? Because it is customer-centered. It provides services or financial services in a faster manner. It gives the customer a new experience with financial services, an experience where they can pay, send and receive money anytime, anywhere, with lower fees and lower prices. So if banks and other financial institutions can follow this trend, I think they will be able to stay. Plus, if we can resolve all risks related to fintech, such as transactional risks, such as risk related to data, privacy, risk related to compliance with regulation, risk related to services not going to serve anti-money laundering and to finance terrorism and other risks. So if we can solve these problems, I think fintech can prosper more than traditional banks.
Quick comments. We have lots of...
Yeah, it'll be a very quick comment. But I do believe that banks do exist, will remain to exist for a reason. Computers, fortunately, and for some people, unfortunately, have the advantage or disadvantage of having the records and everything. It's immutable. It can't be changed. It is there. There's a record. There's a stamp. You know, in regards to corruption and many of the other problems that are facing the banking sector, not just in Lebanon, but in general around the world, when you have people involved, the risk is, I would say, higher than when you have a computer, for example, making these decisions. Technologies now are coming to the point where you know, fraud and many of the problems that you have mentioned are being solved with fintech. And I think that there is a risk, especially with technologies like the blockchain, blockchain and Bitcoin and many of these financial systems that are not controlled by any central bank, that are peer-to-peer, that I do think that in the long run, right now, today, the price is $1,890, more than the price of gold. That's for a Bitcoin. So the central banks either need to catch up, open up their APIs, or they're just going to be replaced. It's simple as that.
Yeah, all right. Honestly, I promised myself not to get all political, but I got a good introduction here, so I got the excuse to jump into that. But very briefly, you know, there is something called quantitative easing. All right, Federal Reserve inject fiat money. Our money is not backed by gold, and it's simple exchange where people who make, you know, some interest will give to those who need the money. It's the governments will always need to control everything. So that's why I raised my hand actually when they've asked the question, because I think even if we go all cryptocurrency and blockchain and tracing and peer-to-peer, the government will always need to maintain control, and it will flip it over and then control it in a new innovative way. It doesn't matter that banks will exist in 10 years in the current form, but it will still exist even in a different or pivoted or innovated, redone form under the control of governments and central banks. That's my input.
Okay, I have another question for folks. If everyone could please raise a hand. Raise a hand, everybody. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Raise a hand. I see some people without hands up. Okay, if you use cash 100% of the time, put your hand down. If you use cash 90% of the time, you use cash 100% of the time? No, 90%. You guys use cash 90% of the time? Yeah? Can you put your hands back up then? You're ruining our survey. Okay, you guys can play this as well. Put your hand up. Put your hands up. 100%, 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%. You guys use cash 70% of the time? Only 30% credit, digital, etc. Wow. 60%, 50%, 50%, cash, digital. Where did you put your hand down? At 60%? 50, 40, 40%, 30%, 30% cash, 20% cash. Only 20% of the time, 10%. How many people just don't carry cash much anymore? Okay, what were the last two, I think, were like 20%. You, sir? Who else is at about 20%? Anybody else? Yeah? And you?
One point about when I was in France, it was about 70-80% of the time that I don't pay with cash, and in the US, 90% I don't pay with cash, over 90%.
Okay, so you know, there's a fascinating theory that people massively overestimate the change that happens in 2 years, and they underestimate the change that happens in 10 years. So if we think back 10 years ago to the world, what was the world like 10 years ago? What were we using? What were we doing online? How was 10 years ago different? What was 10 years ago? What was technology like 10 years ago? No smartphones. Okay. No smart watches. I've seen a couple smart watches around. No cloud. No NFC. I think Google is like 11 years old now or something like that, right? Was there Facebook? Were you guys all on Facebook 10 years ago?
Sorry.
Facebook, I think, launched about 12 years ago or 13 years ago or something. Huh?
Just to correct, Google started in 96 or 94 actually. So it's pretty old. It's 23 years old already. It's
So
younger than it is. It looks younger than it is, but it is 23 years old. 94, yes. 94.
So for Google search, not related to Gmail or a lot of the other services.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at any rate, I think I get your drift, and definitely electronic payment means are seeing more adoption. There is more credit card or card penetration in the Lebanese market, if we look at it, than 10 years back. I think it must have been multiplied by 10 over these past 10 years, but still far from enough. I mean, any of the banks we look at have only 10% of their card portfolio in credit cards. The majority of the issued cards on the Lebanese market are debit cards, and a lot of those are used to do ATM transactions. So we also have to keep that in mind. That's a mentality thing, but it's changing. I mean, I don't know any place right now where you could go, unless in Arz al Barouk or I don't know where, that they don't have a POS. So that's a good sign. However, if we keep red taping payments, and I agree with Faris on one thing, the regulations are here to protect the depositors. However, if we're talking about a payment startup, or let's say payments, right? I see no reason why BDL still doesn't allow banks to, or one single app to do interbank transfer. I mean, that just, for me, I don't understand it. So a lot of red tape everywhere, just saying, okay, to be secure, let's red tape the whole thing, is, I think, very bad. And we need to look at that and start doing it slowly. Maybe not jump directly to lending and peer-to-peer, but we can start with payment. It's safe enough. I mean, credit cards are all over the place. And just a minute. So, and one thing that the US and the UK tried to do it step by step is by sandboxing fintech. So they say, okay, you know what? You can operate for 6 months, try this thing, take only 1,000 customers, and let's see what happens. And this might be something that, you know, gives courage to the regulators, to the banks, to open up and roll it out quicker.
Yeah, and you know, this is a bit relevant to what Reable does and our application, in which we intend on integrating payment gateways into the application as an API. But the regulations, not only here, by the way, it's in most of the Middle East. I was in Jordan a few days ago, and it's the same case there, in which you know, if apps aren't able to process payments, fintech startups will go elsewhere. And while you know, in Europe next year, by law, they have to open up all the banking APIs to the public. And I think learning from other countries and looking at what they're doing and how they're dealing with their problems would be the best solution, because in the end, fintech companies are not going to stay. They are going to leave where they have a market and where they can operate in the easiest way.
Concerning in Lebanon, the banking sector is protected. So the central bank and the policy of the Lebanese government and parliament is to protect the sector. So it's not easy for international banks to come in, which is not creating a very competitive environment. I'm not criticizing the central bank or the policy, I'm just stating a fact. Any international bank who wants to open in Lebanon can only have a number of licenses for branches to operate in, and then there are a lot of other things that doesn't allow them to do so. Plus, Lebanon is not very attractive for international banks to come because the risk is very high, and so they'll have to take it into consideration in their consolidated financials, which they don't want to do. HSBC just went out of the market, and Standard and Chartered that a couple of years ago, and so on. Inside the country, in terms of the existing banks, there is no regulation that prohibits payments to be made across the banking sector. However, the infrastructure that we have till today, depositing a check or giving somebody a check, we don't have even an electronic clearing system. So payment of your electricity bill is not because there is a regulation that forbids it, because the government is not ready to receive the payment, because the banks are not ready and the infrastructure is not there. These are issues related to government policy and the ability of Lebanon in terms of its infrastructure and regulatory issues that we'll talk about later on. Those are prohibiting, if you want, any transaction. However, nothing forbids a bank today to allow you to make a transfer online from your account to another account you have in another bank. The problem is banks are not offering this service neither. They're not interested in giving you this option. So, but there is no regulation that forbids that to happen. In terms of the technology, the APIs, I'm not sure you can force banks to have their APIs public so that they can be used easily, not even in Europe. We will have to see how this will evolve. Just to one last point related to the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is competing with SWIFT. SWIFT, not with the banking sector, with SWIFT. SWIFT has been the only institution that does globally transfers between the banks. They are the regulator. They are the clearing house, if you want. Okay?
Transfer of information.
Information and transactions.
Only payment.
Payments.
Information.
Information,
Not
but this is how debit credit happens accordingly. If I send you money through a transfer from my account to your account, wherever in the world, it goes through a SWIFT system that does this transaction or informs you that I'm sending you money and so on, which is, so this Bitcoin this is where it's disrupting and more than it's disrupting the banking sector. So the banks may tomorrow decide to use Bitcoins if they are allowed by the regulator to do so.
Hey, can we, who has questions, either questions for the panel or just things about fintech that they are curious about, that they are confused about? Who has a question or something they're confused about with fintech or anything? Yes, 1, 2. Okay, let's start with these ones here. I'm gonna walk around, just get a couple questions. Yes, sir.
I have a question for BDL.
We're just gonna take a number of questions first, and then we're gonna go.
All right, I have a question for BDL. I think BDL regulation can prevent some fintech improvement, like does not allow cloud technology in the banking sector. Can you answer this question, please?
Can you repeat your question?
BDL regulation inhibits innovation in fintech and doesn't allow some cloud services, etc., that would enable innovation. But before you answer that, we're going to get this gentleman's question.
I have two questions, actually. The first one is for BDL also, regarding makatib and taslif. Who regulates those in Lebanon? Who regulates makatib al-taslif in Lebanon? So that's question number one. Question number two is that how many fintech startups are there in Lebanon and what are they? Maybe this is for you, David.
Okay, any other quick questions while I'm here? Questions? Okay, Lama, you want to start?
Yes. Oh, yes, of course. So for the first question, I don't know any regulation that forbid the creation or activity of fintech in Lebanon. I mean, within BDL, there is no regulation that prohibit this. Money dealers are regulated by the Central Bank of Lebanon. We have the intermediate circular number 272 that actually regulate the activity of money dealers. As for if I may answer the third question, I will give some names of fintech companies in Lebanon. I have 12 actually names. I have Reable. I have Zumal also, which is a crowdfunding platform. We have Neotech. Neotech uses artificial intelligence to help traders make better investment, right? We have also with Reable Jellyfish, which is a personal finance management startup. We have Anzimati and Luya, who work in payments. And we have Blue Ring, right? Netix, PinPay, CardSwitch, Ubanki, and Bimpos. So in total, 12 companies. These last, the list, I mean, the last fintechs work in digital bankings or provide services for banks. So 12.
Is that list online somewhere?
Not really, no. It's from our own research. But according to a report from WAMDA that was published in this year, actually, they have, or they talk about 17 fintech company in Lebanon.
I think it's important here to differentiate between the service providers or the solution providers and the companies that are running their own schemes. And in Lebanon, if we include everybody, it will be more than 100 companies. But otherwise, companies running their own schemes are very, very few because of all of the challenges that they would face otherwise.
And what was that? You had another question. What was the question right before the number? Ah.
What do you mean by مكاتب تسليف? Yes. So مكاتب التسليف, we call them actually comptoirs de crédit. Yes, comptoirs de crédit are regulated by the Central Bank of Lebanon, and you have the list of the comptoirs de crédit on the website of the Central Bank, and they were the list was the unregulated number was huge compared to the number that is regulated today.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left, and I want to try to look ahead a little bit into the next stages. Now, the title here is a booming hub for financial technology innovations. And while there is some great stuff happening, I see that statement as more of an aspiration than a current reflection. There's some great seeds, but we have maybe a fair bit of work to do to really become a leader. And a lot of the discussion is frequently about regulation as a barrier. Now, regulation as a barrier also means that you're talking about the domestic market. And so I'm curious, apart from regulation, what else should we be doing to build Lebanon into a thriving fintech hub over the next couple years? What are some of the gaps, and what do we really need to focus energy on? How can we help all of these people be using fintech and many more of them be launching fintech startups, et cetera, et cetera?
I'll be very quick about this. As a Lebanese startup that has started in Lebanon and now is operating internationally, one of the biggest issues that we have seen in Lebanon is, number one, there's just a huge lack of training for startups that want to work, and not only in fintech, but in startups in general, but training, mentorship, corporate partners that actually want to work with these startups to build these solutions, not just putting their money in a fund and just saying, okay, here's the money, here's invest in these startups, and now the bank is working with the startup. But more partnerships in that regard. Yeah, we need to have more of these things, more of conferences that are specifically fintech focused on. And last of all is we need to make sure we're not looking at Lebanon. Lebanon is, while it is a big market, we have many banks and we have many people, but any fintech startup that would want to keep its market as Lebanon, I don't think is a very investable one. So we need to be looking outside of Lebanon and get into connections with people outside of Lebanon as well as inside to truly make a global impact in fintech. That's my opinion.
All right. Very, very good point about the training thing. And we got here one excellent mentor. I went to Alt City Phase 1, and it was really very inspiring. And It's like one of a kind. Now Alt City is thriving, and I was trying to always send people from Tripoli to Beirut, and I mean entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, to tell them that David Nepti can be really a good reference for this with his team, of course, and I thank them for this. Second are the Speed Accelerator, who also have access to, in addition to all the training and coaching and exposure and the consultants, you get some cash, you get some money, some good money invested for an exchange of shares in the company. And this is excellent for startups as a local initiative from Lebanon to continue, you know, down the road. Now for the upcoming couple of years, I'm sorry, I said it would be shorter. But just to make my point, that in Lebanon, soon we have our stock exchange, the Beirut Stock Exchange. It will be half privatized. All right, this is cooking right now. People are working on this. So half of it will be owned by the private sector. And all of these startups and all the investment in young companies and young people to build new businesses, one day a good fraction of them will become an IPO and go public, all right, and become listed on the Beirut Stock Exchange. The problem with us at the moment is that we have only 31 companies in Lebanon that are listed and are public, where you can buy shares into on the Beirut Stock Exchange, while in the US it's 7,500. All right, and our capitalization, our market capitalization is 11 billions only, while in the US is 25 trillions. There is a lot of thinking for the management of all of these trillions, and we should not only look at Lebanon, even for a starting point. Today we are in a global world. We can build now, upload on a remote server in the US and sell as if we were in the US, and they will help us a lot with this. Believe me, we started even selling online before incorporating our company by CyberSource, and it's the Visa card mother company, without even incorporating, just through the Bloom Bank. All right, I said all of this now. But just to tell you that the opportunity is global, not only Lebanon local, neither regional. Go right away to sell in China, sell online to the US, sell to whoever you want.
So I'm glad, David, you asked that question before, because I think this is the صلب الموضوع. So in the life of any company, and especially startups, which are high growth biased companies, there are two major, let's say, phases: the inception phase and the growth phase. On the inception phase, so to go from 0 to 1, what we need is what fintechs and any other company in Lebanon needs more support, an easier way to incorporate. In Lebanon nowadays, right now, the laws for setting up a company are still, I don't know, maybe 100 years old. It's so Osmaniye. You need to put the stamp and spit on it and it's crazy. I mean, the amount of work. And today, any company you incorporate with another person is a potential problem down the line, because exiting the company is a hassle. Selling and buying companies is a hassle. So we need to start at the very fundamental root of company making. Forget about startups and fintechs. Let's start there. So this is a major project that needs to work. And I think there are tons of laws that have been sleeping for the past 20 years in the drawers at Saht al-Najmi, not to be more precise. So we need to lobby and to put pressure on the government to set up this. The next problem, if we talk about fintechs in particular, is access to the Lebanese banking market. Is some incentive to the banks to actually encourage those nascent companies and say, okay, we will buy from you, we will help you. Even if you don't make it, it's fine. Because at the end of the day, if we dream about selling in the US, the first question they're gonna ask you, who is your reference, Habibi? You're coming from Lebanon. You say, I have no banks in Lebanon. Banks in Lebanon are too afraid to buy from us. It's not a good sales pitch, you know? Um, and this is where we hit another roadblock. And this is why a lot of fintechs, a lot of startups are going and incorporating in the UK, in Ireland, in France, internationally, even in Dubai. I mean, look where we are right now. It's because they're afraid to say we're a Lebanese company. Because Lebanon has bad marketing. And this is a major point and a major hurdle that we face whenever we try to grow internationally in the second phase. So there's a lot of infrastructure work to be done, not on the telcos and not only there, but also on the marketing of the Lebanese image and on the fundamentals of setting up companies.
I totally agree with Paul on everything. I'm going to first say the fintech as part of the digital economy has the better position than any other sector in Lebanon because of the strong banking sector and a lot of knowledge in this area. In general, the digital economy is suffering from the ecosystem. The ecosystem has evolved tremendously in the past 10 years. So just so we don't have the negative aspects of it, on the opposite, people like me and Paul, I don't know about the others who started, Michelle definitely, who started long time ago, we know that when we built our first companies, the ecosystem was far, far, far from what young entrepreneurs have the opportunity to have today. However, with this tremendous improvement, which is basically maybe the biggest reward or credit should go to the BDL for the 331, law 331, which really created a certain dynamism in the market, triggered a lot of the Alt City, Berry Tech, Tech Hub, and all those initiatives here, there, and everywhere. However, the ecosystem at large still suffers a lot. That impacts fintech, but impacts any other digital economy we think of going into. And just in few words, number one, regulation, definitely. The regulatory infrastructure is very, very, very far from what is required to build a very strong knowledge economy and digital economy. It's not only about regulations related to telecom or internet or others, but it's also related to creating companies and bankruptcy law. So if we don't have a proper bankruptcy law, this is never gonna allow entrepreneurs and young guys to take risks and say, yes, okay, I'm gonna try something, I'm gonna go bankrupt, I'm not gonna go to jail because of that, and society is not gonna blame me for that. So bankruptcy law and a lot of other economically related laws. Two, infrastructure, telecom infrastructure is a disaster. There is no way we can get anywhere substantial. Yes, we're gonna try and we're gonna do our best, but Lebanon will not be on the map if we don't have by far better telecom infrastructure. And finally, the positioning of Lebanon in terms of the perception that the other markets have of a Lebanese-based company, and the ability, or the government has to help those companies be able to export their services and their products. Even though it's online, there should be a lot of help from the government, because only the government can help young entrepreneurs and startups open new markets in a very substantial manner.
Lama, you have some last comments?
Yes, I have. Actually, I don't want to talk about the negative or the disadvantages of the market, because I have many more. Okay, I would like to say that the Central Bank of Lebanon has launched many credit incentives to support, in particular, I mean, technology project and technology startups. It has also launched, as you know, the Circular 331 that encouraged a bank to enter in the equity of knowledge economy startups, venture capital firms, and incubators. At the central bank also, we are working to develop a stock market for the SMEs. And we think that this stock market will enable more equity funding and more liquidity for the SMEs, and will attract also investments from outside Lebanon, and especially from the Lebanese expatriates, because we will have more transparency, better or more developed capital markets and financial markets, and this will definitely attract more financing from outside Lebanon.
Okay, so we're out of time, folks, actually. So just quick, so actually, Circular 331 is now 4 years old, I think. I think Berry Tech has been around for around 10 or 11 years. Alt City has been around for 9 years. It has been evolving for a while and got a massive boost from Circular 331. I just thought of a quick announcement as well. So we're actually having a startup sprint focused on fintech in early August 3rd to 6th, I believe. Also including health tech and education. So if anyone is interested in that, please come up and give me your emails and we'll share
We'll
it
be
around.
happy to be there.
Fantastic. And I believe our organizers here, IDAL, Andrea, has a quick announcement as well about some of the wonderful stuff that they are up to. Do you want to come up here?
So I just want to let you know that IDAL is the Investment Development Authority of Lebanon. We work to encourage investments in Lebanon, and to encourage exports of Lebanese products, including IT, telecom, and technology products. To do that, our mandate allows us to give financial incentives, including tax exemptions of up to 10 years for IT companies who register in Lebanon.
Yes. I just want to tell you that I have some copies from the credit incentives of the Central Bank of Lebanon, and also some pamphlets on the Circle 331. If you would like to have a copy, don't hesitate.
You have a quick comment, question? What about though?
I fully echo and endorse the statements of both Faris and Paul, and I would like to add that at the end of the day, fintech is all about innovation in terms of ecosystems. And today in Lebanon, we have a very powerful banking sector, insurance sector. We have very good practices. And at the end of the day, this is our capital. It's the Lebanese capital of having advanced knowledge in banking, in insurance. And the fintech ecosystems is all about convergence, is all about collaboration. So this is something that we should use to innovate and get it exported globally, but I think also that we have a role to play regionally. We can be the hub, the access to the Middle East, enabling Islamic banking, enabling lots of different cultural related financial and insurance practices into the Arab world.
Thank you very much. We got to stop. You can come, everyone come up here and can keep chatting after. Thanks, Emil.
Oh, the mic is still on. I just want to say one last thing.
All right, everybody.
One last thing that I do think is missing in regards to the ecosystem here in Lebanon is, while Circular 331 is doing a fantastic job at building the ecosystem, but we need other initiatives that are not from the central bank, that are from private initiatives that need to compete as well as collaborate with these institutions in order for us to actually have an ecosystem worth talking about. That's about it. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, IDAL, and thanks, SmartX.